All right, so these two cymbals here, this is the 22-inch HH Vanguard, and this is the 22-inch HHX Complex Thin Ride. I think I mentioned before that during COVID, I had the drum set set up as a 360 Neil Peart style setup with another kit behind me. And that was where the two ozone hi-hats originated from, was trying to put hi-hats on the back kit. So I wanted two cymbals that, you know, same thing as the hi-hats. I wanted two cymbals, because at the time, the only cymbals that I had on this part of the kit was the Sick and Plague hats. I had these two, the Custom Crash and the Garage Ride. I had the Swishes, or I had the Omnis, I had the Swishes, I had the Chinas, and that was it. So I needed something that was different than any of those cymbal modules. So I went with the ozone hi-hats, and I went with these two cymbals to be crash ride, you know, the same kind of idea as everything else here. They can be crashes, they can be rides, you know, just sort of multi-purpose cymbals. And so I went with these because I didn't have anywhere else in the kit. And, you know, if you include the Big and Ugly the small Big and Ugly collection that I have, I didn't have any cymbals that were thin, heavily hammered, basically jazz ride type of cymbals that were also lathed. So that was what drew me to the idea of playing these cymbals. Obviously, the only thing in these cymbals, the only thing that isn't lathed is the bell of the complex thin. Other than that, they're completely lathed. They're both very heavily hammered. They're both very light, so they both open up really quickly. And they have a lot of spread to their sound, as you can hear. They're still ringing. And so, you know, at the time, they worked for the 360 kit, and then I started to bring them into this setup, and what I found was that they actually gave me the perfect place to go after I had already used, you know, the ride cymbal sounds that after I had already used the Omnis and or the Swishes and, you know, some of the hi-hats, after I had used all of those things, and I still needed something else to do, dynamically, musically, whatever, these cymbals are perfect for doing that kind of stuff. So like I mentioned, for example, I had already used in the Herd of Bison song, the Nomad, I had already used hi-hats, I had already used the custom and the COVID, or sorry, the custom and the garage. I had already used the Omnis in the choruses. I had already used the Swishes in the sort of solo section at the end of the Nomad. And so I was looking for something else to do once I got to the summons. And so I went with these. Now the summons starts in F minor, and I wanted to start right hand, right foot, so I went with the Vanguard. And then it takes the same riff and it modulates it down to E flat minor. So then I switched from the Vanguard and I went to the complex thin. Again, that's, you know, that you can find examples of that kind of thinking all over anything that I record. The idea that, oh, the key signature is changing. Okay, I'm going to switch cymbals. You guys are, the rest of the band is changing a chord at this particular moment. Okay, I want to reflect that, so I'm going to change here. So on and so forth. So that's one use. That's one example of using these cymbals. I also used them, let's see, in the Herd of Bison album, the same Lord Buffalo Herd of Bison album, I used them at the end of the Return, where the vocals came back in, because at that point, I had already used the Omnis. I had already used both Omnis. I didn't feel like it was appropriate to use the Swishes yet. I was saving those for the score. And so I needed, dynamically, I needed a lift, because that was, I mean, that's the climax of all the vocals that happen throughout that album. and it's really, I mean, it's a part where everybody's playing really fast and aggressive, and we call it the thrash section. And so I used both of these, playing the first half of the phrase on the Vanguard and the second half on the Complex Thin. Again, more musicality, just trying to switch it up and you know, give your ear a little bit more something else to focus on. I've also found these cymbals to be very useful, like in the Enfierce song Nemesia. The chorus of that, the verses of that song are all played on the hi-hats. The pre-chorus is on the HHX Ozone because I needed it to have a lot of air. And then the chorus is, there's not really I mean, I'm vaguely riding on the AAX Omni, but there's just a lot of crash cymbals going on. So I had used these 6 cymbals kind of to their max. And then we got to the bridge, and I needed a ride cymbal sound, and I wanted it to be different. So that was when I went to these 2 cymbals. And it gave, you know, again, it just gave that dynamic arc another, you know, it gave the dynamic arc one other step, one more phase. And then for the other, you know, the same thing there in the Enfierce song Tetiarawa. The chorus happens 3 times, but the second time it happens, all of a sudden it's not in 6/8, it's this really heavy 4/4, you know, aggressive kind of sound. So I wanted a ride cymbal sound that had a lot of spread underneath of it. Again, dynamic lift. So I went with these 2 cymbals for just that chorus, and then I brought it back at the end just to, again, give it the dynamic lift. And, you know, then one other song I can mention is the Enfierce song Clarent. I played the chorus of that song on the Vanguard, and then actually the double chorus at the end using the Vanguard and the Complex Thin, because that song is quite a slow tempo. And so I really needed there to be a lot of spread, way more spread than I was getting out of the Omnis. And again, I didn't want to use the swishes, but even at that, the swishes didn't have the right kind of spread for what I was looking for. So I went with these, and it gave me the spread that I was looking for. So I think what we'll check out now is actually that double chorus at the end of Clarent, after the complicated section. So that would go. Something like that. Obviously, I wasn't really counting. You know, drummer sin. So, and also one thing I should note: we'll talk about this later, but the 20-inch Paragon China is a brand new addition. So I'm still trying to figure out. Yeah, I have an idea of where I want to start using that sound, and that's a perfect example. That when I'm looking for a third ride cymbal sound, that, you know, and I've already exhausted the Vanguard and the Complex Thin, that I would go there. So I just did that there. In the video version that we're about to watch, I go back to the Vanguard because I had already used the Complex Thin. So here we go.